summertime and the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Your daddy's rich and your ma is good. She good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings you're gonna rise up singing, and you'll spread your wings and take to the sky. But until that morning, there ain't nothing can harm you, with your daddy and mommy standing by. So the song makes glades for us, little safe and comfortable and cozy places in the middle of the heat, whatever kind of heat it is that we're taking on, especially that cacophony in our heads that at the same time tells us we're not good enough and we'll never be amount to nothing and we need to restrict ourselves and keep our head down and stuff like that. And at the same time, you're too good for this place. These clowns that you have to hang out with and work with, and nobody appreciates you. The song makes a wonderful little place for us to stay in the middle of all of that. This place where I've been filming these, my backyard, I didn't used to like to go to church. There were a lot of things about church that I liked, and some other things that I didn't like, and one of the ones I didn't like the most was having to go to church. And I was the preacher. You know, you have to put on special shoes and make sure your shirt doesn't have any breakfast on it or anything, and you have to walk a certain way and talk to people and smile a lot or be reverent or something, you know, and everybody else is having to do the same things, and you know they're unhappy too. You know, it's not bad unhappy, but we'll get through this. But I didn't like to go to church, and that probably came from when I was a kid in little towns in Texas. We got one pair of shoes a year, Sunday shoes, and after 8-9 months, it got smaller and smaller every week, and pretty soon my toes were all crunched up in it like this, and I had to put on little clip-on bow ties, you know, and the shirt was too small, and it'd keep trying to come off, and you put it on, and parents were commenting, especially my mother, commenting on how it didn't look right, and then you have to sit there the whole time and listen to the guy talk in a language that was not a language you understood. I mean, it was English, but I don't know what the meaning of it was, except that I was sure sorry for something I had done, and I was going to be even sorrier in the future. I didn't like the best thing about Sunday morning going to church for me was the sound that my too tight shoes made when we hit the gravel of the parking lot going home. That crunch, 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 that was like popcorn for the soul. You know? So when I was the preacher many years later, I still didn't like to go to church. I wish we could just skip that part and go to Sunday afternoon. oftentimes on Sunday people would go to a certain Mexican food restaurant here in the Rio Grande Valley, and everybody was happy now because they weren't in church anymore, and maybe they were having a couple of beers or margaritas or something, I don't know. But I got to eat a big plate of Mexican food combo and drink lots of iced tea and talk with people and visit and laugh and shout across the table, make noise, and generally show Christianity. So that was fun. But here I get to go ahead and enjoy the better parts of Sunday without having to go to church. The best parts I like is contemplating and being free to wander around in the song. I didn't recognize it so much as a song in those days. And church I was in, you had to preach on the prescribed, ascribed text every week. And I thought that was a good discipline, because that way I didn't go off like Jimmy Swaggart or somebody and talk about my own things all the time and my private pet peeves. Somebody said, you can be pretty sure that you're drifting into the wrong vein when you begin to believe that God hates the same people you hate. And that happens. But it didn't happen to me. So I get to enjoy the best parts of Sunday, which is meandering around in the text, in the song, without somebody coming into my office on Monday morning and say, well, now, preacher, we're really glad to have you around here, but, what you were saying yesterday, I think you want to tone that down a little bit and tell me what I should have said. And nobody's ever done that about one of these videos. And I appreciate it if you want to make some comments, even if it's, what the hell are you doing? Because that kind of helps me stay in my own lane. And it's about meandering. God meanders. There's even an Irish, a whole line of thinking with jewelry and designs and things like that in Ireland. I want to say the original Ireland, called The God Who Meanders. And it's got the little, well, anyway, it's jewelry and lots of thinking. And the idea is that God shows up out of the bushes, as it were, at all kind of times. God meanders and does what God wants. And the last 10, 15 years, I guess, I've been drifting further and further away from a personal God, because I find that too limiting, especially for other people. And to me, God is more everything. Young man I love very dearly, my son, says all that is. He doesn't say God, he says all that is. I like that. Well, anyway, I get to meander. Today we're going to meander, but we're going to cover a lot of ground because the two stories are kind of long with a lot of pieces. And if you leave out some of the pieces, it's like leaving notes out of a song that you don't like because they're too high or they're too low. Or no, you got to sing the whole song even if you don't sing it all that well. So the first verse of the song, from the list of names that opens up the Gospel of Matthew, it's number 10 on that list, and it's a couple, Salmon and Rahab. And the one that matches that in the actual book of Matthew is after his confrontation with the devil, and then after he learns that John the Baptizer, who's like his spiritual brother, he learns that John the Baptizer has been arrested by the king. And at that point, Jesus leaves where he is, which is the neighborhood of Jerusalem, and goes to a little place beside the Sea of Galilee, which is a lake, called Capernaum, which means the village of compassion. And those are the two stories that line up to sing to us. And what they sing about is embracing. And skipping ahead now, and we'll come back, embracing doesn't necessarily mean, you know, like Aunt Mary at Christmas time when you're this tall. It isn't necessarily embracing at all like two lovers do on the park bench when the lamplighter doesn't turn the lamps on in their spot. It isn't necessarily wonderful and good embracing. It is, but it doesn't feel like it sometimes. More, it feels sometimes like a wrestling match, or the way puppies will growl and fight at each other and roll all around their mother's back or their father and so on, and lion cubs and all the little cubs in the world apparently do that. I certainly did it with my favorite cub, Steve, when I was growing up. So embracing, that's what we're talking about. So the story of Salmon and Rahab. Salmon was part of the 12 tribes of Israel, which makes it sound like, you know, they were an organized foot soldier army or something like that, but it was a horde. It was much more like Attila the Hun and his crowd, or that kind of thing. It was 12 different tribes who had been wandering in the desert for 40 years, and the time had come, according to what they understood God wanted them to do, the time had come to settle down and skip the part about building a city and just go take a city away from somebody else and live there. And that's Jericho. So Salmon is part of that horde that's now camped a couple of miles outside of Jericho. And the people of Jericho are really afraid, different reasons, but they recognize that those people have been in the desert for 40 years eating tortillas without any hot sauce and crickets, and they are hungry. They want Jericho for themselves. So they're not very good at, the Hebrews, the Israelites, are not very good at fighting and stuff yet, because they haven't had any fights. They've been wandering around the desert all that time. Joshua, the leader at the time, sends a couple of people in as spies to reconnoiter what it's like inside of Jericho. And if you think about that, you know, like in a movie kind of thing, here's two guys, don't stand out very much. Everybody else is wearing city clothes, you know, kind of like Sunday go to meeting clothes. And here are these two guys wearing coats and layers of sand from the desert and whatever clothes they had managed to, or hides or something. And they're kind of, you know, trying to blend in, going down the market or wherever. So the cops spot them and pursue them. And these guys, these Hebrews, Israelites, they run to the house of a prostitute. And I don't know how they knew she was a prostitute, but anyway, named Rahab. And she takes them in, hides them. She knows the cops are after them. She also knows men. She recognizes these two guys have got moxie. They've got power and strength. They know what they're doing. So she hides them up on a roof. And when the cops come to her door, she says, "Oh yeah, I saw those guys. They went that way." And the cops go off down some alley in a Middle Eastern classic times town and so on. Then she goes to the guys and said, "Look, I know the cops are after you and I know who you are," and says, "I know that you're going to win this battle and you're going to destroy the city and take the city. So when that happens, I ask that you spare me and my immediate family." They say, "Okay." So she lowers them down, night falls and they lock the gates of the city, and she lowers them down the walls of the city in a basket, a large basket, one at a time. Just happened to have a rope and a basket laying around. I mean, I didn't write this story, the song did. But anyway, she lowers them down, and she's already given them instructions to run, to go to the hills and hide there, and wait for 3 days before they tried to go back to their camp. Something like that. So they do, And they get back to Joshua, and they tell Joshua they're reconnoitering what the inside looks like. They say, among other things, that the people of Jericho are scared of this horde of people that's going to take them. So the battle happens, about walking around the city and blowing the horns, and the walls came tumbling down and all that. And then they get married when it's all settled down. Oh, left out that part. The Hebrews kill everybody in Jericho, and all the donkeys and the dove and the chickens, kill every living soul in Jericho except for Rahab and her family. And the way she makes that happen, she has a long red scarf or veil or some cloth, and she ties it across the doorway, the front of the house, and her house is part of the wall of Jericho. Apparently it doesn't, not part of the part that collapses, but so when it's all said and done, they get married and later have a child named Boaz, who is of course in the lineage of Jesus, Joseph, and he's the one the story will move to next. Okay, so that kind of sounds like a Brad Pitt movie or something like that. Where's the song? Well, Solomon's name means it's a derivative of the word for shalom or Solomon or peace or emperor, grandeur. But peace, close enough. He's a peaceful warrior. He's a warrior named Peaceful. Rahab is the town prostitute, and her name we're not sure, that's from another language, Canaanite or something, but let's call her Wild Thing. So this is a marriage between the peaceful warrior and the wild woman, and they get married and embrace, and the child born of their embrace is Boaz, whose name means immediately, and he has his story we'll get to later. So that's the story. Now the correspondence over in the actual book of Matthew. The time comes and Jesus is understanding. His spiritual brother, John the Baptizer, is put in jail by the king in Jerusalem. And it says Jesus left that place and went to make his home in Capernaum by the sea. And it doesn't say why. Now, Capernaum means the village of compassion. So one way of understanding the song, there's many levels of understanding any of the biblical text, and especially the ones having to do with the song. From that time on, Jesus began to be known as Jesus from Capernaum. And everywhere he went, it was his nickname was a call back to the place Capernaum, which means the village of compassion. So people who talked about him or talked to him, they'd say Jesus of compassion. So that's one reason maybe that Jesus moved there at that particular time, is so that people would begin to understand that he was about compassion, not like John the Baptizer thought he was, a guy who was going to chop down the trees and level this and tear up that and put all the sinners and stuff like that. Not vindictive or discipline in that sense, but compassion. Now, in the book of Matthew, it says that Jesus moving down to the Sea of Galilee had to do with a prophecy from Isaiah from hundreds of years after the Jericho scene and hundreds of years before the Jesus moving to Capernaum scene, in the middle somewhere. Matthew says this was to fulfill the prophecy, upon the people who lived in darkness a great light has shone. And the people who lived in misery and unhappiness were made happy by Jesus coming to live amongst them. And of course that's a vision and an overall statement. It wasn't any darker atmosphere-wise at Capernaum than it was upon the hill Jerusalem. But they were in sadness and darkness and unhappiness. Well, you have to know the story why. The place, Galilee, beside the sea of the whole region, was the boonies. It wasn't big time, wasn't wonderful and beautiful like the Jerusalem and all the wonderful things that happened in Jerusalem. It was the boondocks. It was Dog Patch. If you remember Dog Patch, Little Abner, cartoon strip back in the 50s and 60s, it was a place everybody else made fun of. They were all hicks. They lived on Kickapoo Joy Juice. They were all hicks. They drank Kickapoo Joy Juice and talked funny and did funny and stupid kinds of things. Dog Patch was. Well, Galilee was like Dog Patch. But by Jesus, with his prestige and his presence and his glow, he moves there and lifts their astral. He lifts their spirit beings. He makes them start to feel better about themselves and their town and the fact that they traded in smelly dead fish for a living. He makes them happy. He didn't just go there to, preach the gospel, repent, kingdom of God is at hand, and stuff like that. He was the kingdom of God, and he is embracing them and claiming them and laughing with them and drinking with them and carrying on like the poor people of the world always do. Maybe for us, a better way to understand it in our day and time would be like when Martin Luther King appeared on the scene, the politics scene of the 50s and 60s, and began what we call now the civil rights movement. There was a way that King, so I've been told, lifted up the people and gave them hope and gave them unity and gave them, we shall overcome. And they did, at least to that extent. So Jesus being there was that kind of uplifting influence on the whole region. And much of his ministry after that has to do with encounters in towns of that. But there's another level to the embracing. Back somewhere in the history of this, before David, before the conquest, before the Israelites kind of took over the whole place, there were the Philistines, they were called at that time, a different clan and racial group and language group from the Canaanites, which was before that. The Philistines and the Israelites fought each other and raided each other's villages, stole each other's horses, stuff like that, off and on for a long time. And in one of those encounters, the Israelites are outnumbered pretty bad, and they run and end up, it says that the Spirit says, shh, go that way, go that way. The Spirit tells them they end up in this place hiding out near the Sea of Galilee. And they manage to give the slip to the Philistines who are in hot pursuit, and they run on by them or something. I don't know the story very well. And the name of that place is Capernaum. Only it wasn't Capernaum then. They say to one another, this place that has sheltered us and spared our lives has shown us great compassion. Our Lord has sent us to this place. Our God has saved us through this place. We'll call this place the village of compassion. And so Capernaum, from hundreds of years before, was a place of refuge and salvation and escape from death. See, in the four Gospels that account for the crucifixion, not one of them says Jesus died. That's said elsewhere in other contexts, but in the four gospel writers who are just writing about Jesus, not one of them says Jesus died. Two of them say Jesus breathed his last, and the other two say he gave up his spirit. But they don't say he died. It's not because he didn't die the way it's to highlight the fact that death is not what we think it is. And what we think dying is, Jesus didn't do that. He was killed and he gave up his spirit, or he breathed his last. But he didn't die the way we ordinarily think of die. He embraced the dying, he embraced the crucifixion, he embraced everything that he came to do. Many years ago I used to worry that the way the story is told, it kind of sounds like God the Father knows this has to be done, but he doesn't want to do it, so he sends his son. Kind of like when I was a kid, my father had hay fever, allergies, and it especially got him when he tried to mow the lawn. And so as soon as I was big enough, my mother and I mowed the lawn. We had a push mower, and both of us would get on it, and we'd push and push and push. And it kind of sounded like that kind of story, you know. God the Father doesn't want to do this, he makes his son go do it. Go cut the lawn, kid. That sounds irreverent, but the whole point of having a meandering God, of knowing that God is meandering, is that my heart, my mind, my smart aleck mouth can meander too, because we're all embraced by God. We're embraced so intimately by God that there's no space between us. We're one. Sometimes embracing is a joyful and giggly and warm or passionate. It's good. And sometimes embracing is a wrestling match, like Jacob wrestling the angel at Peniel, or other struggles. Zerah and Perez in the womb, jostling each other around. Me first, no, me first. Embracing as the spiritual experience, the genesios that we are going through in our lives, no matter what our circumstances are. There's times we're embraced with gentleness and love and passion, and there's other times that we're, trying to get the upper hand. And to embrace all the different kinds of embracing is what we're called to do, what the song calls us to do. And the song is telling us it's part of it, it's necessary, and it'll be okay. Rahab and Salmon embrace each other. They're about as far apart sociologically as two people could be. She's the town harlot of some language group called Canaan, and he's the peaceful warrior who's been living all his life on locusts and tortillas with no hot sauce and whatever else they could find out in the desert. And they embrace. Now, I've said a couple times that the song is sung not just in the Bible, not just in the book of Matthew, but in all kind of places. There's a movie called Babette's Feast, and at the end of the movie, they're all having Christmas Eve dinner. All these old people, old, worn out, close to death people. And one of the people who's at dinner is the general who lives in town, at this little Danish town, and who happens to be home visiting his mother for Christmas. And he was a long time ago the lover, the one who courted one of the important religious figures in this little town, two sisters who helped their now dead father with his ministry and is taking care of all these old people. And he rises to give a blessing to all these people that he's known off and on, maybe since when he was young. I don't know, the story's not clear, but he's giving their blessing, giving them a blessing. And he says, righteousness and mercy have embraced. The law and love have kissed. We think that by obeying the law, we're going to miss out on something good. We have duty, righteousness, and it will cost us the fireside, the grandchildren on the knee, the softer, more wonderful aspects of life. And we go off and do our duty, and we lose out. That's what we think, he says, but it's not true. Uprightness and gentleness embrace, and gentleness gives back to the person what he or she thinks they've lost. And so it is when we do what we have to do. Compassion comes and embraces us and gives us the peace that passes all understanding. And you can say, well, how can that be true if doing your duty is going into the military and you get shot, killed? How can that be of dying? The person who goes into a burning building to save the people in the building and ends up dying. How can it be true, we might ask, our minds ask. How can it be true of following the law, doing what we're told to the point of death? How can that be true that compassion has embraced us? Well, that's what the song is telling us. The song is not, the text, the general speech is not telling us, you better believe this, or you have to believe this, or, well, I know it's tough, but it's true. No, it's a lullaby. And in the lullaby, we become carried into the place where we understand in our hearts that that is true, and that we experience the embrace. If we'll only let the song help us quit trusting the brain with its stupid thoughts. That's the illusion. The truth is the embrace, the embracing. The story, the song is telling us that as Salmon and Rahab embrace, they create an alloy. They're like copper and tin that make bronze. Or maybe you know this, all aluminum that we experience in anything, gutters or car doors or whatever, is not just aluminum. It's aluminum and other things that were put together, because aluminum itself is so soft, it's like copper. In fact, I think it's even softer than copper. It just bends. It doesn't have any resistance. But aluminum mixed with things creates an alloy that is strong, stronger than either of the two constituent elements. And so it is with embracing the person you think is about as far away from you as anybody could get. Being embraced by the other, the person who's so different from you as you barely can recognize you're both humans. Being embraced by and embracing the other makes you happy. A lot of people don't give money to homeless people on the street. They think it just hastens their demise, makes them that closer to alcoholism or craziness or suicide, and they're probably right. But compassion says in the song, what's $1? To you, it's not even a tip that you're going to give the waitress. But to that miserable, unhappy person, it's huge. And the song says, do it anyway, because it is the embracing that makes us happy. All the words that I say, you may not follow them, and I may not be right in saying them in the first place. But the melody of the song of love is what will change you. It is changing us. We could hear the song in another language when we don't understand, and the song will still lift us up. One of the most beautiful songs is, I'm sure not going to play it on the banjo, is Bacanalias Brasileiras by Villa Lobo. And there aren't any words, and it's hauntingly beautiful. Well, the song of love, the divine song of love, is the same way. And it's so alien to how we usually think of life and think of ourselves that we keep forgetting it. And Henry Nouwen said this: we need reminding always that we belong to a loving God who will not leave us alone, but will remind us we are guided by love on every step of our life. Receive the blessings of love. Receive the blessings of love, and be reminded we are guided by love on every step of our life. Receive the blessings of love. Receive the blessings of God. Keep listening to the song. Keep listening for the song. Whoever the God who meanders may sing it to you as you go passing by. Sing a little part of it to you. And every time you come to a glade, oofta. I really enjoy making these things, and they're just to see you happy. I'm not trying to change your theology or make you believe something that's not true. It is true.